You're now listening to a new episode of Gratitude Through Hard Times. Gratitude instills humility. Gratitude removes the ego. Gratitude helps empower the best in others around you. Our goal is to guide individuals and companies to practice gratitude so you can live a longer, happier, and more successful life. Get ahead of life with connection and purpose. This is Gratitude Through Hard Times with Schembra.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of Gratitude Through Hard Times. It's your host, Schembra, and folks, the holiday season is upon us. It's December 22nd here in New York City, and I hope y'all are off to a wonderful close out of the holiday season. I hope it's been a great year for you. To all our loyal listeners, I welcome you back with open arms. It's good to see you again, my friend. As you know, some of my favorite moments throughout the week are when you email in your thoughts, questions, comments, and concerns of today's episode guests. My inbox is open. To all the new listeners out there, it's nice to meet you, friend. I don't know how you stumbled upon our humble little corner of the internet, but we're glad to see you. If you were in New York City, I'd invite you to my dinner table and feed you a bowl of pasta sauce. Whether you Googled today's guest or you somehow were shared this episode from a friend, just know it's an act of them seeing you and saying you matter. My invitation is to join us for this journey. Take a look back through the podcast episode archives, and you'll see our many-year commitment bringing on some of the world's great leaders to share their human story from the heart. My invitation is to click that subscribe button by the end of this podcast and join us along our great mission to bring more human connection and gratitude out into the world. You're going to be in for a wonderful episode today. We have a new friend, Brent Kenneway, all the way in from Boston. And as you can tell, I'm wearing my Cisco Brewers sweatshirt, which I wear every day. But don't worry, I've washed it since the last 3 episodes you saw me wore it. Anyways, Brent is a big senior leader at one of the world's largest human resource companies, UKG. Brent is National Group Vice President of Sales at UKG, leading go-to-market strategy, customer acquisition, implementation, long-term partnerships for the services and distribution segment. He's got a long, fancy bio of how he got there that's in the show notes below, but he's a man who's of and for the people. He's all about family. He lives day in and day out an attitude of gratitude. And he's just a great lover of high energy people and relationships and doing great work for our world. So stay tuned for a wonderful, or keep tuning in for a wonderful episode. And let's welcome today's podcast guest, Brent Kenneway. Welcome to the podcast.
Chris, thank you so much for having me here. Greatly appreciate it.
Well, we owe last week's guest, Eric Stein, for the thanks of having you come on our podcast here today. You saw Eric post a photo of Eric and I talking about the importance, the power of saying yes. And what a wonderful post he gave in one of the busiest seasons of his life. But you looked at that as this chance to pause and to research what we're doing and to meet us halfway by coming on the podcast here today. What are you excited to talk about today?
I'm excited to talk about pretty much anything and everything that has to do with incorporating gratitude and how your attitude makes a massive difference from a day-to-day perspective within the sales arena, within personal life. So I can take this any which way, but I just need to call out work. I've worked with Eric in the past. Fantastic individual. What an incredible talent he is. The podcast was amazing. Listen to it. And just want to say thank you for that connection that we made based on that is the reason I'm sitting in here today, which probably ties back to the power of you saying yes to having me on.
Ooh.
So thank you.
Hey, honor to have you. I just, you feel energy. I know it sounds weird, folks, but I think that we got to go around the world trusting, giving people the benefit of the doubt. And when you feel a good energy of someone reaching out through the internet, give them a chance, say yes. As I said to Eric, I did 49% of the work inviting you here, but you did 51% of the work coming in from Boston to be here through a number of actual scheduling mishaps due to illness and all those kind of things. The flu is in the air, and so I'm glad to make it happen. Folks, we're going to be talking about gratitude as a tool for employee retention, culture building, gratitude in the age of AI to give you a competitive advantage, building relationships to drive performance, and so much more. But I want to start off with a simple question. And we asked Eric the question halfway through the podcast, but I want to kick it off with you here today. Folks, if you're new to us, we've been asking a very simple question, our gratitude question, pretty much every single day for the last decade. It started around the dinner table. We've used it to build relationships, and I want to ask you here and now, Brent, if you could give credit or thanks to one person in your life that you don't give enough credit or thanks to, or that you've never thought to thank, who would that be?
Okay, so I knew this question was coming. Obviously did my homework. And there's laundry list of people I could probably go through. But when you start thinking about gratitude and making sure that it's ingrained in your DNA, it's something that you're doing on a day-to-day basis. I thought through my parents, obviously, what they did for me growing up and being a father of four myself right now, the sacrifices on the weekend. And by the way, I'm the youngest of four. We'll get into that a little bit later and what that taught me. But, obviously my parents, massive thank you. But when I look at just my adult life and really what's driven me or allowed me to continue to expand my own skill set, my experiences, and hopefully I do a good job of showing her gratitude, but it'd be my wife, Jenny, because she's at home with the four kids. She's had multiple careers. She was a pediatric nurse, gave that up while I was out traveling, right? And I was building my repertoire of sales leadership aspects and just going out, meeting customers, conferences, and all the things that happened back home where I'm hoping I did say thank you, which I believe I did, but maybe not as much as I probably should have. She was holding down the fort. And she's, recently pivoted her career. It's my chance to give back to her as she's started her own interior design company after COVID with one of her friends, True Elements Design in Boston, which is great. But it's just, for her, I'm not at the position I am in my life without her backing, her support, her guidance. When I made this recent jump over to UKG, first person I talked to, right, to go through it. So tremendous appreciation and gratitude towards you, Jenny, and love you.
How old were y'all when you met?
23.
Oh.
Yep. So I just moved out to California with four of my teammates, played basketball in college, and my next brother up. And we just went on a whim. We're going to move out there. I go to corporate training out there. And we had one rule when we were moving out. My brother and I said, we're just no settling down. He was 26. I was 23. We're going to have some fun. We're going to explore. 2 weeks in, I meet her at corporate training. We did long distance for roughly, I want to say 6 to 7 months, and called her up in March of 2006 and said, I bought a one-way ticket home. I'm coming back. And the rest is history. Yep. So been together for 20 plus years.
We're going to get back to Jenny in a little bit. But nice to meet you, Jenny, and I look forward to getting to know you over time, and I look forward to hearing what your give back journey, Brent, looks like to Jenny in this next chapter of her design career. I'm excited for that. Brent, you mentioned you're a father of four, but you're also the youngest of four. What's your relationship like with your youngest child?
Oh, that's a great question. So my youngest child, let me just go through the roster. I have to, otherwise they're all going to be upset at me when they definitely listen to this. So I've got a 13-year-old daughter, Ava. I've got a 11-year-old daughter, Juliana. I've got a 9-year-old son, Ben. And then we had Emma, who's my 7-year-old. And she is the most dynamic, funny, she has grown up pretty much through COVID, where she was stuck at home with the older kids. So self-sufficient, self-reliant. She's a spitfire is probably the best way to call her. And she is funny, loving, caring. We sometimes butt heads, believe it or not, right? So it's different personalities. And one of the things of parenting, which I've always found just fascinating, is all four kids, completely different personalities, right? And there's some integral aspects that you see throughout all of them. But for the most part, they're unique. And I look back at my own siblings and we're definitely unique as well. And that's part of the joy and the fun of parenting, is trying to figure out what makes each one of them tick, which, by the way, from a sales leadership perspective, I look at my job as we're all managing multiple personalities, right? People are driven in different ways. People are driven and motivated in certain aspects where others may not be. And with Emma, you want to know what we talk about gratitude. And I've made a big shift, I think, over the past couple of years of work, work, work. And I need to appreciate my kids, right? And when I come home, I need to be present for them, because sometimes that's difficult. Coming home from a trip, everyone wants to see me. They're jumping on me, and I'm still in business mode and trying to figure out how to make that jump. But going back to Emma, I love her, will do anything for her. And she just will put the biggest smile on your face when you see her. She also will be the loudest one in the room too.
Well, I look forward to watching, their journey as they grow up. What do you hope that the world, what do you hope they bring into the world that might be a little emulated from the attitude or outlook that you have to the world?
The number one thing that Jenny and I try to instill in them is the power of positive thinking.
Ooh.
All right. And I'm going to go way back to when I read The Secret, probably 15 years ago. And I view that as probably a real transformational journey for myself, right? Putting out big goals, ask, believe, receive. And we're trying to build that within our kids right now. And they're all athletes. They have their ups and downs, and you're trying to instill in them that, hey, just focus on the positive, right? It's really easy, whether it's personal or work or just within the world, to just focus on the negative. And I'm always trying to pull them back, right? There's a lesson to be learned in any and everything that you do. And I grew up this way, the youngest of four. I just sat back. You talk about active listening. I was an active listener and active watcher of, okay, this works, this doesn't work, and try to find that pattern to make sure that I'm doing the right things. I'm going to focus in on school. I'm going to focus in on sports. And that really helped train me that you're going to have experiences in life that aren't always going to be happy, but there's always a lesson to be learned. And whether that lesson, and this is what I'm instilling in my kids, you get injured, okay? The lesson there, take a positive out of it. Maybe we need to train a little bit harder, right? Maybe we need to stretch a little bit harder. You go to school and you don't necessarily get a good grade, okay? Luckily, they're getting good grades right now, but there's a lesson to be learned in every single aspect. The personal relationship with their friends. It's that inward searching of, okay, what could have I done better? Maybe to avoid that conflict. So, that whole attitude of inward looking, be positive. It's way more difficult sometimes to focus on that positive, but if you do it and you set your goals, we do vision boards, right? These are things that I've instilled in my personal and professional life that have been really effective. And I'm really hoping that they carry it through in their lives as well.
This is pretty incredible. On August 2nd, I'll skip the story, but my dad and mom, they had a motivational publishing company since 1978.
Okay.
And one of the core tenets is the power of positive thinking. It's the positive mental attitude. As they say, it's focused on three things: aim, attitude, image, motivation. And the positive mental attitude was the core tenet. So shout out mom and dad, and my cousin Norm Merkusen for really instilling that in me from a young age. I have a question. It's we live in a world where everybody, when something bad happens, their instinct is to say, is to point the finger and say what other people did wrong. But what you're shifting is not even to ask yourself, what did I do wrong? It's how can I be better? So it's shifting in two parts. It's shifting from blaming on others to radical accountability and ownership. And it's shifting from problem solving to solution finding. How could I be better? How do you prepare someone to be able to do that? Like, that's really hard for people.
And to that point, it's a journey that I'm still going through day after day after day. If you're present And this is what I'm trying to, and I'll pull it into the work world as well, but for my kids to focus on them, if they're present and they're recognizing the situation and they're focusing on it, it's a lot easier to start to have that inward focus. The challenge that we have is we're all distracted. We were laughing. I have 2 phones here, right? The kids now at certain ages, they're getting phones at a younger age, and we're really trying to restrict the access. They have iPads, they have Xboxes. It's just really difficult to really get them narrowly focused. But I think if you have open communication, which we really strive to have in the workplace, same thing, open communication, making sure that the human aspect of what we're doing, always draw it back to that, right? And there's a lot of negativity, but if you can pull out the positive aspects or stay within your lane of what makes you successful and happy, I think that's key. Even when my kids are fighting with each other, I'll have to tell them, if the third jumps in, hey, stay in your lane. We got it. We're the parent, right? And, it's all where you place your energy and focus ultimately. And that's where I think from a home perspective, always continuously working on that. From a work perspective as well, every organization that I've seen is pretty much going through some sort of transformation, right? Whether it's AI enabled, whether it's leadership changes, inclusive of myself jumping over. And it's easy to get caught up in the hype of, hey, this change is happening, doom and gloom. And you got to pull people back, right? We're just people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to work together. We're going to support each other. We're going to make each other successful. And I think drawing that focus, drawing their energy in the right areas, it's a lot easier to start to get them to focus on solutions, right? And looking forward as opposed to just what happened in the past.
Yeah. I think looking back in the past is, part of the problem of what's gotten us to where our country is today. And, I quote the great Stephen Kotler, who's the world's leading expert on flow neuroscience and peak performance coaching, 8-time New York Times bestselling author, 4-time or 3-time Nobel laureate. We had dinner at the Stand. with Charlie Fusco, actually a couple of years ago. That's funny. At the actual Stand in the restaurant. We're recording this podcast studio at the Stand right now. Stephen looked at me and he said, we have a cult of trauma in our country. And the more we the more we dredge up what went wrong, the boring injustices of our past, as Stephen Pressfield calls it, the less strength we have for optimizing for our future and achieving peak performance. Right? The more that we literally look back at the negative, the less we're strong about looking ahead to the positive. That's where our country is right now. Do you see that?
Of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Stephen Kotler literally calls it the cult of trauma. So I want to make a quick little shout out and teaching moment of my friend Michael French out in Durango, Colorado. He's got 2 beautiful children and a wonderful wife, Celestia, and he teaches his son and daughter a very specific debrief model that all parents listening to this can practice with your team and with your kids, whether you have 4 kids or 8 or 2. And it's the military style debrief. What went well? What could have gone better? What are we going to do differently next time? You see how those are all positive solution-oriented questions?
Absolutely.
Not what went wrong, what could go better? What could go more right?
And just to tie a bow on that, I went through the Thayer Leadership Academy training back in 2015. And this is what they teach you, right? And they had, I think it's called the Red Team, is what they do within the Army, which is to pull people back after a situation. And the interesting thing, and I use this analogy all the time, what they taught us there is, okay, here's the guardrails, right? We want to go from point A to point B, but here's the guardrails. And what they teach people is, depending on conditions, depending upon whatever it may be, you need to get from point A to point B. But if you want to go straight line, you can go straight line. If you want to zigzag, you can zigzag, right? But kind of stay within your core training. And the way I pull that back to work is when we're in a situation, whether we win, whether we lose, we're trying to go back, we're trying to learn, what can we bring back to the rest of the team? What can we bring back to the masses to go through and say, hey, this is what we learned, put this in our repertoire, right? And that constant feedback loop is so critical.
Speaking of feedback loops, my friend Enrico Galasso, who's the global CEO of Peroni, the beer brand. Actually, now he just moved up to the holding company, the Asahi Group, and now is the head of Europe for the Asahi Group and all their brands. But he does a wonderful skip level feedback meeting process. He first asks the person in a skip level meeting, what are you grateful for in your manager? And the second question is, what feedback would you give your manager if the feedback in itself was a gift?
Oh, that's great.
Pretty interesting, huh?
That's a great.
These are positive oriented, solution oriented, gift and generosity oriented things.
And by the way, I have a case of Peroni in my fridge right now. So
yeah,
I just,
good.
Yep, there we go.
I just watched Molly and my girlfriend Molly and I, one of our favorite shows right now is Emily in Paris, which,
I've seen it.
Many film purists would look at that and scoff. But it's fun. It's like my version of Bravo or something. But anyways, it takes place in Rome now, which is my favorite city in the world. And of course, there's this like scene in Emily in Paris that involves an influencer marketing Peroni. I can't wait to text Enrico and say, so tell me about that. Anyways, there's one drawing that I came into this episode with, and this is the final part of this chapter, and then we'll move into the work section. But you see this triangle right here, folks? It goes back to what you just said about helping things go right. So this triangle is called the influence pyramid. It's featured in my favorite or most referred book of all time called Anatomy of Peace, which is it's a book about 6 sets of parents dropping their kids off to a wilderness rehab facility in the woods of Utah. Very similar to the rehab that I went to. And when the parents drop off the kids have to, literally go out into the woods. And the parents have to stay there for 2 days with the rehab owners. Now, the rehab is owned by an Israeli Jew and a Palestinian Arab. Now, this is a book from decades ago. This is not a new conflict, right? But by the way, that's not me taking sides. That's just me saying there's a long history. Anyways, in the book, this one parent goes up to the rehab owner and says, I can't wait to learn how you're going to fix my kid. And the rehab owner says, we're not going to be talking about your kids at all for the next 2 days. We're going to be talking about you, the parent. And the guy, Lou Herbert, the CEO of Zagram, he says, me, the parent, why? My kid's the broken one. The rehab owner says, yes, but in order to see the change you want to see in your kid, first you have to make the change within yourself. Does that sound familiar? That's what Brent was talking about earlier. Don't blame others. Take radical accountability for yourself. Secondly, it's what Brent was just talking about, which is through that book, they spend the next 200 pages essentially talking about this pyramid, which is called the influence pyramid, where they say that most people just live at the top of the pyramid, correcting or fixing what's wrong. But they don't take the time to be at the bottom of the pyramid, which is helping things go right. So we live in a world that's driven by negativity where people go straight to fixing or correcting what's wrong. What this book does is, and what Brent stands for, is flip the whole world on its head and say, help things go more right, and lead with that. You see that slight shift?
Of course. Absolutely.
Huge difference in results, though.
And I think when you're trying to build a culture, one of my favorite quotes, culture without systems breaks, and then systems without culture underperforms. And when you look at that, it's, if you're doing just one thing and that's it, if you go into a situation and you're just overly positive and you put the blinders on, you don't want to focus on certain areas, you're not going to get the end result you want. If you go in with a systematic approach only without the right mindset, you're not going to get the result you want. So it's that culmination of the two, right? And what you're talking with the pyramid, which is, again, we can fix as much as but it's rinse and repeat, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, if you want to go through and you want to fix something, you have to get your hands dirty. And from a work perspective, it's one of the key tenets from a leadership aspect, which is you need to be out in the field with your people. I can't tell you how many times throughout my career, I've heard like, this deal's not happening. I'm like, Let's go get it. Let's figure this out. Right? Let's understand the customer. Let's go sit down with them. Let's take them out to dinner, really get to know them on a personal level. And we talked about this. You sent me a great article in advance, which is when you start to inject gratitude into your work life with your customers, with your coworkers, there's an aspect that there's a boomerang effect. It's probably the easiest way to say it, where people start feeling like, I want to give you gratitude back, right? And when you look at what's really critical to our success, right, it's making sure that people feel they have a purpose, right? They have the right mindset. They're going into it. They understand that there's a personal aspect to it, right? We're all doing work, but what is it tied to on a personal level, right? What is it tied to, from a community aspect, right? And that's what we're essentially trying to develop and build. And what I'm doing with my new team is build a really cohesive community where we know the key tenets, we've got each other's back, we're positive, we're challenging, right? And ultimately, we're going to find success when we do it.
And by the way, what Brent's saying about doing all these kind of things, that doesn't mean that there won't be hard times. It's just that you will be better positioned to respond to those hard times accordingly. My friend Eric Termundi, he's a great speaker on the circuit talking about workplace performance and team building and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things he says to the audience is, we may not be able to predict the future of X, future of human resources, the future of health. We may not be able to do that, but what we can do is build the best teams in order to prepare for whatever the future might be.
Great.
And so all of these things that we're about to talk about is not about preventing bad things from happening. It's about responding to them accordingly when they do. And gratitude is one of the core tenets of how you've built this entire. So let's give scope, for instance. By the way, UKG has 20,000 employees. It's a big company.
It's a big company.
Right? Tens of billions of dollars in revenue, big company. What you're talking about here is not a soft skill used for small things. It's a soft skill used in the toughest moment at one of the biggest companies on the planet. Folks, this is the truth. So tell me about this attitude of gratitude, how you use it to build better customer relationships, how you use it to inspire team performance. Which part do you want to start with? You want to start with customers?
Let me start. I can actually combine them all because I
Perfect.
think it's one fluid motion. And when you look at it, UKG, I was at a previous company in the technology space for 15 plus years. I'm going to throw it back to last week with Eric Stein because I have one of those individuals that he had for gratitude was Jen Morgan, who is the current CEO of UKG, and she is incredible. I had the chance and opportunity to work well under her at my previous employer. And what she implemented in there was this aspect of radical candor, right? And really authenticity. And that has probably been one of the biggest guiding principles from a workplace perspective that I learned, which is to be a good human being, you've got to tell people the truth, right? Where they stand with you, where they need help from a coaching and development perspective. Authenticity, Eric talked about this last week. If you're not yourself, it's going to come through. If you're not a happy-go-lucky person, you try to emulate that, people are going to see right through it right away. So one of the pieces of advice that I give to everyone that I'm mentoring is be yourself, right? And the beauty of this industry and this country, you can be yourself and find success in so many different areas and different ways. No two individuals on my team are the same. We have completely radical approaches that one person might take. They're successful. This other person may go down because they're playing off their own strengths and ultimately they know their weaknesses. And it's my job and my team's job from a management perspective to make sure that we're present with them. We're listening. We're not just telling them. The biggest piece that I will do with mentoring is I never give the answers. I make people look inward. If they call me up and say, hey, I've got a question, I'll always ask, what do you think you should do? What do you think? Tell me the pros and cons of the approach, right? Let me understand, what you think to go through the progressions of what the impact would, like a quarterback would, right? You do this, what is going to be the end result, 2 or 3, 4 steps down the road, right? And get people to start to process themselves, because I think as a culture, it's just easy to say, hey, I'm really busy. Let me just give you the answer and move on. But people won't learn that way. And we're trying to cultivate a community and a culture where people can answer their own questions. They can use their creativity and then bring maybe ideas to us to say, hey, this is what I'm going to do. Do you think it's a good idea? Potentially. When you start looking at how do you start to move, let's call it the ship, right? Or an aircraft carrier in a very short period of time. UKG, we've got 65 million users, 30 billion frontline interactions, right? Processed over 1 trillion in payroll. Like this is big stuff. We're working with organizations really critical. These are their people. Number one cost most organizations is labor, right? And we have this workforce operating platform, which pretty much combines, the human element, right, with the systems and the technology to help enable and get their folks, successful, happy, retention. When I came in, I had an organization that definitely went through a lot of changes. And where I started is the human aspect, right? And this is why, looking at all of your work and reading through the book, it's like, this is why it really draws me towards it. Because people, whenever there's change, their tendency is to be nervous, right? And we can talk about AI. Everyone's nervous about AI. I have a completely different approach to it, right? And actually leaning in and adopting. But I opened myself up on a personal level. When I first did my first town hall with my team, it was a picture of my family, right? Hey, this is who I am. I'm a human being. I'm going to be working with you. And that starts to disarm because we're in the people business. We're working with people, our customers, same thing from a customer perspective. First thing I'll say to them is gratitude for either the opportunity to be in front of them or thank you for being a customer for X amount of years. I think people need to hear that. And I've always grown up this way where if you're able to show appreciation and love and respect, you get it back and it comes back in folds, right? And so I've just always been wired that way. I was a kid that when I was 5 years old and my brother, I was on the slide and he shook it and I broke my arm. I came back. Apparently I was smiling, right? My arm dangling, right? So it's just, I don't know if I'm just dispositioned this way, but that's what I'm trying to help build within the team. And when you have teams that have gone through a lot of change, a lot of discourse, your goal is to be a unifier, pull them together, get that North Star to exactly where you want them to go to find that success. And it's baby steps, right? And I always attribute it to 2 things. Standardization. We're going to standardize what we all do day in, day out. And if we can do that, now everyone knows what the daily, weekly expectations are. And there's really no confusion specific to, hey, I should be doing this, I should be doing that. The next phase I try to put in is I operationalize what our business process is, meaning when we're meeting with the customer, we're all saying the same thing, right? We all understand what it is that we're doing, what we're trying to accomplish. And I did this at my previous employer, when you get everyone doing that, and it takes a little bit of time, the lift is monumental. And on a personal level, my goal is always know their entire families, right? And understand who their kids are. If they have kids, their spouses, their siblings, whatever it may be, that's really critical. We do these things called quarterly business reviews. And every quarter we get together and we just take a look at the business. And it's not just current quarter, it's future quarters. And I force everyone to put in, what are your goals? But you have to at least have one personal goal. And that's what really gets, I swear, when we're at dinner afterwards, it's what gets the conversation going. Because people are like, oh, you had a goal. I had one person. I'm going to read 30 books this year. And I'm like, step me through, like, why 30? Okay, have you done this before? Name your top 10 list. And it just gets the conversation going. Some people are just monetarily driven. I want to buy a Ferrari. Okay, that's you. There we go, right? But it's so interesting to see the different backgrounds. And again, pulling it back to the human element, that's what we're doing. We're spending more time at work than we are our own families a lot of the times. So you might as well make it fun, enjoyable, get to know them, and them also open up and let them know who you are. And, for anyone that's worked with me, they'll tell you, they hear my kids in the background. It's, and I like that, right? Every once in a while, it's good to kind of let people see that you're human and you're going through some of the same exact things that everyone's going through.
Man, Brent, the intentionality that you take to this, first of all, fist bump to that. Look at my notes, folks. This is how much I agree with what everything that Brent is saying. You, let's start with radical candor.
Okay.
About telling the truth, but listening and never giving people the answers, right? It reminds me of that old quote, if you give a man a fish, he's fed for a day. If you teach a man a fish, he's fed for a lifetime. you're establishing a commitment to lifelong learning and questioning and curiosity and adaptability in your people. The World Economic Forum just came out with their Unlocking Human Advantage report 2025 of the skills that are most AI, least to be taken by AI. Sorry.
That works.
Most resilient in the face of AI, whatever you want to call it. That if you develop in your people, you will win the AI race. If you develop in yourself, you won't be replaced by AI. It's social networking, right? Human relationships and, social connection. It's curiosity. It's learning agility and adaptability. It's resilience. And you know what? It's creativity. Now, here's the interesting thing. In the World Economic Forum study, when someone asked what makes a good leader in the age of AI, a lot of people said leadership and social networking, but actually valued it lower than something that people didn't answer as many times, but valued the highest, which is creativity. They put so the fact that you already said creativity as part of the thing that your journey instills is pretty amazing.
And the beauty of it is, if you look at majority of the stats that are coming out for, let's say, first line or frontline workers, one of their biggest gripes, I think it's over 73% of people say that my decisions can't have an impact on the end result of the company. When you put the keys back with them to drive and you say, what do you think we should do? That's their impact. That's what they're giving back.
So I'll introduce you a concept. It's a concept that Toyota brought to America in 1983 in their Georgetown, Kentucky plant, which is their first Toyota plant. The assembly line of Toyota was all about continuous change, improvement. It's called Kaizen. Kai means to change, Zen means for the better. And their mantra is called Jidoka. Jidoka means automation with a human touch. It's a human in the loop innovation operating model, right? In the age of AI, we want to keep a human in the loop as well. But on that factory floor, folks, they had something called the Andon cord. It was a cord above every single Toyota employee on the factory floor's head. And at any time in the manufacturing process, they could pull the cord, production would stop, and they could have a voice. Anybody, from you're hammering in something or you're screwing in a wrench or you're the boss at the top, could pull the cord and your voice will be heard. My friend Justin Birnbaum used to be at Global Partnerships at TED. He told me that they did a TED at Toyota. They literally asked, 100,000 frontline workers for their best ideas for the future of Toyota, picked 13 of them, coached them how to be speakers, and then gave TED Talks to the company.
It's amazing.
Now, who's the most innovative and patent-oriented, most reliable and resilient car manufacturer in the history of the world? Toyota.
No surprise.
No surprise. I love what you said earlier about giving, about making time for connection, about going into the field and building relationships. My friend Jeremy who's head of sales at a company called Residio, his team calls it darken the doorstep. Go out into the territory, give first. All right? You give first with your ear. You give first with gratitude. You give first by generously connecting a customer to another customer for their positive benefit, not your gain. Radical, huh?
It's amazing. And I think there's been a good shift. So when we went into COVID, obviously halted the field operations. And we're pretty much doing everything remote for a quite period of time. I was so eager to get back out, just due to the fact that when you make those personal connections, when you're sitting with somebody physically face to face, you get a different result than over the phone. And I think that's part of the change management. We're still going through some of it where, folks need to, it's the difficulty with it is people get so comfortable doing different things, which isn't a bad thing, right? The work-life balance got a little bit better year round, right? Maybe you can actually help with pickups, right? And this is kind of the gradual shift, I think, just of our society is, hey, how do you go back to work at the office versus you had flexibility? Are you more productive? It's a moving target depending on where people are in their lives and what's important to them. But I will tell you, there's nothing better. Even if it's a meeting across the country, you're like, I got to go. There's so much happening at home. When you meet those folks and you're physically with them, it's the most gratifying experience, right? You're breaking bread with them. You're understanding who they are as a person, right? That whole personal human element connection, which, moving to AI, I think is still going to be more and more critical, right?
Well, it's a big word called and. We're moving to AI and we're making time for human connection. There's a funny little story that I'll tell about a region because we were talking about his hopefully upcoming trip to Italy soon. We were talking about Italy, and there's a lot of things that you can do in Italy that are on the beaten path. Rome, Venice, Florence, Amalfi Coast, phenomenal places. And there's things that you can do off the beaten path. And one of the things that's off the beaten path is this region called Emilia-Romagna. And it's just south of Milan and Venice, and it's just north of Rome and Florence. It's this little region in between the Po River and the Apennine Mountains, along this ancient road from 2,000 years ago called the Via Emilia. There's these towns: Modena, Parma, Reggio Emilia, Bologna. This region, those 4 towns, is known for producing really slow food. Prosciutto di Parma, Parmigiano Reggiano, balsamic vinegar that takes 25 years to age. It's known for slow food. Those 4 towns, Brent, are also known for really fast cars. Ferrari, De Tomaso, Ducati, Lamborghini, Maserati, the fastest production cars on the planet. It's the land of slow food and fast cars. You hear that music? Slow and fast. It's Italy's #1 export region, and nobody talks about it. But if you want to achieve peak performance as a region, as a country, as a county, as a company, you got to do both. You got to be known for really slow things and really fast goings. So when you're talking about bringing AI as an operational model into a company that's already processing $1 trillion of payroll, it's also happening at the same time as slowing down enough to make sure that you let each and every one of those customers know, I'm here, I see you, you matter, I care.
Yeah.
And that can only happen by going slow. You mentioned the town hall earlier. I was working with a client one time, and they have 106,000 employees, and I helped them know the difference. Instead of thanking 100,000 people at once, thank 100,000 people, one person at a time. It'll take longer, but you'll get farther.
That's true. And I think when you look at just AI, because we brought it up, what we're talking about at UKG is people first AI.
Yeah.
And this is a story I tell my kids just to kind of give them perspective, because I think the talk track out there is this is going to replace everyone's job. And I said, no, it's not accurate, right? And I think there's going to be certain mundane tasks that will be augmented. But I draw it back to 1967. Jack Kilby comes out with the handheld calculator. And there was massive pushback within the entire education system, right? They thought people were going to not be able to do math and arithmetic, and it was going to slow down the economy, and people weren't going to learn. And you look at just based on that, the technological advances, you look at folks from that were accountants that were literally doing long division for hours, highly prone to potentially errors. They have an automated process. Now they can go and they can say, hold on, I don't need to do all that laborious task anymore. I'm able to go through and start to look at the data, maybe take a different approach for this customer, right? Or this situation. And I think the same thing is going to be true within the AI world, which is it's going to augment and speed up certain aspects. I'm using it, things that would take me from a preparation perspective for going into a customer that would take me 2 to 3 hours, I can do 5 minutes now.
Yeah.
That means more time to either, if it's late in the day, spend with my kids, make that transition, be present in there for them, right? Or my wife, maybe go to a game or if I'm behind on other certain tasks, I can get this done now. And I think it's really a retooling of skill sets within organizations. And I view the AI aspect as more of a, let's call it a transformational aspect within a company on how to actually utilize it, as opposed to it's going to come in and wipe out a bunch of different jobs. And I know there's a lot of data out there. I think there's a slowdown between the ages of 22 to 25 with hiring right now as we're working through this. But if those folks go and start to figure out how to utilize the technology, how to prompt it properly, open up different avenues and opportunities, I think it's going to create more.
It's interesting to look back 10 years from now. The youngsters that are losing entry-level job opportunities now might actually have the greatest net positive impact on our world 10 years from now. But you got to zoom out and look at, you got to be able to look at the bigger picture, which so many of us live in a short-term, mindset, but we don't see the big picture. Not that I'm saying it's easy to be a kid. I mean, our generation was graduating during the 2008 recession. So we know what it's like to, have entry-level jobs cut.
Yes.
Which I'm grateful for, honestly, because I, first of all, I was kicked out of college because I had to go off to rehab and all that kind of good stuff. But I couldn't go and get an entry-level job in corporate America in the 2008 recession. I had to figure out what I had to do. I had to live at home for a little bit. I had to save up a little bit of money. I had to do, work odd jobs, boat captain, kayak tour guide, greatest jobs ever. But I moved to New York City with no job, no college degree, one suitcase, and I had to figure out an alternative life path, which kind of didn't make sense at the time. But now 10 years removed, I'm completely grateful for. I mean, if I didn't have the alternative life path that either a global recession or rehab and addiction gave me, I would have had a very linear life and wouldn't be doing the things that I'm doing now. So I'm grateful for that adversity. I mean, that brings us, as we start to land the ship, that brings us back home to what you were talking about earlier, is using gratitude to find positive benefits in our darkest hour. It doesn't prevent the bad things from occurring, but it helps you process them when they do occur.
It does. And to your point, you can never connect the dots forward, only backwards. And
Steve Jobs.
And I use that all the time, which is things may happen for a certain reason, but it's what you make of it within that situation.
Yep.
And just your lens and approach and being thankful that, hey, I went through this, I'm going to learn, I'm going to grow, because there's always growth opportunities no matter what situation it is. So
I think it's phenomenal. And, what you were just saying brings me all the way back to the start with Emma, which is that you just talked about how AI might give us the opportunity to hyper customize how we lead and serve each individual person that we're surrounded by.
Yeah.
And that's how you lead your kids. You said it earlier. And I think that's how you interact, and how the UKG way is of interacting with customers, hyper personalized, hyper customized in the language they like to receive it, but at scale, $1 trillion of accounts payable, or payroll processed. It's pretty neat. First of all, I want to ask you, if Jenny was in that camera right there and she was in this room with you right now, what would you say to her?
yeah, just I appreciate you on a scale that you probably have no idea about. So just everything that you've supported me through and you've supported the family through. I'm not sitting here doing anything without you. So just immense gratitude.
Any last words in closing?
Let me just say thank you to you. All right. And I hope everyone really understands this. We literally just met, I don't know, a week ago via a LinkedIn, me reaching out saying, great podcast, great guy, connected. You want to come on board? I'm like, oh, hell yeah, let's go. I just think it's a really cool experience for you taking a shot on, let's call it like a stranger. Right. And obviously did my homework on you and just, what you're bringing. And I think what you're doing in the mindset that you're trying to permeate throughout, let's call it the world. It's really special. All right. So gratitude for having me on board. Appreciate what you're doing and you're preaching on a day-to-day basis. And you got a huge supporter in me.
Thank you for coming on, pal. Folks, wow. Did you feel it? Did you? Does that motivate you? People in the control room just nodded their head. Folks, let me do a little recap. Be you. An old boss of his taught him about radical candor, and Eric Stein talked about it last week. Just do you. Whether it's wearing an al dente cap, whether it's producing theater on the side, whether it's going and knocking on every customer's door, do your thing. If it motivates you, do it. Talk less, listen more. Ask, believe, receive, and dream up really big goals, but don't forget to celebrate the small things along the way. Damn, it feels good to be a giver. That's an offshoot of that. Damn, it feels good to be a gangster rap from a long time ago. Damn, it feels good to be a giver. Stay in the lane of what makes you happy and successful. I don't know if that was the first time you've ever said those in those words, but that's the mantra of a lifetime. Stay in the lane of what makes you happy and successful so that when you miss, you're not that far off kilter as you learn what to do next. What could have gone better, or what went well, what could have gone better, what are we going to do differently next time? Spend more time helping things go right rather than correcting or fixing only what's going wrong. It pays to have a positive mental attitude, the power of positive thinking. And by the way, the power of the pen. Don't just rely on typing out the rest of your life and questions through AI. Write things down every now and then. My dad's been preaching that for 50 years. Find the positive benefits versus finding the negative problems. It's all right to fail every now and then. It's all right to fall in a hole every now and then. But the next hole you fall in, just know you'll climb out bigger, faster, stronger than the hole you were in yesterday. Why? Because you've got the greatest superpower in your back pocket. Gratitude. Gratitude doesn't prevent bad things from happening, but it helps you pick yourself up when they do. As a reminder, this was not a soft skills-based conversation with somebody who does nothing. Today was a soft skills-based conversation on the future of work from a leader of a 16,000-person company that processes 1 trillion, not billions, 1 trillion of payroll annually. Folks, this is the way. Now it's up to you. It's been our pleasure to bring this podcast to y'all. My invitation, if you're new to this podcast, is to click that subscribe button. Join us along for the journey. If you like this episode, share it with a friend in need, someone who you need to make feel seen. Keep joining our humble little corner of the internet journey. We're going to keep bringing you these podcast episodes. I hope y'all are having a phenomenal day on Earth, folks. Remember, it's your world. Go explore. We'll see you next episode. Brent, thanks for coming on.